Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Exodus chapter 22. Moses is still at the top of Mount Sinai, receiving the law from the Lord that's going to act as a covenant agreement between God and the nation of Israel. A lot of the laws in this chapter are going to relate to property, and then expand out to how we should more broadly treat other people and God. And meditating on these laws helps us see the connection between the two. God owns everything, right? He owns all people and all the land of the earth. He owns it all. It's His property. With that in mind, the instructions to take care of other people's property takes on a new realm of significance, as well as just being a good law in general. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 oxen for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. If the thief is caught while breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there will be no blood guiltiness on his account. But if the sun has risen on him, there will be blood guiltiness on his account. He shall surely make restitution. If he owns nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If what he stole is actually found alive in his possession, whether an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall pay double. Continuing with these property laws, we get elaborations on not stealing back from the Ten Commandments. The first law is a price standard for the restitution that the thief should pay when their crime is discovered. And then following that, there's a clause about how if a thief is killed in the act of stealing, the surviving family members of the thief will not get restitution from the person the thief was stealing from. Though if the thief is struck and still survives, he will still be held accountable to pay restitution for his thievery. God also commands that if the thief can't pay back what he stole, then he will be sold. And remember, that doesn't mean sold to foreign slave traders. That means he will work as an indentured servant until he pays off his debt. The common denominator in all these laws is that restitution, the act of being made whole. If a man lets a field or vineyard be grazed bare, and lets his animal loose so that it grazes in another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. If a fire breaks out and spreads to thorn bushes, so that stacked grain or the standing grain of the field itself is consumed, he who started the fire shall surely make restitution. If a man gives his neighbor money or goods to keep for him, and it is stolen from the man's house, if the thief is caught, he shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, then the owner of the house shall appear before the judges to determine whether he laid his hands on his neighbor's property. For every breach of trust, whether it is for ox, for donkey, for sheep, for clothing, or for any lost thing about which one says, "This is it," the case of both parties shall come before the judges. He whom the judges condemn shall pay double to his neighbor. The property laws continue, stressing the fact that both parties need to be made whole, while also commanding that no grudges are to be held against those who aren't responsible. Of course, even in accidents, restitution does need to be made, and people need to be held responsible so that there's equity for everyone. The point of all of this is to create a society that can trust each other, right? And to know that there will be proper justice when a breach of trust is abused. If a man gives his neighbor a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any animal to keep for him, and it dies or is hurt or is driven away while no one is looking, an oath before the Lord shall be made between the two of them, that he has not laid hands on his neighbor's property, and its owner shall accept it, and he shall not make restitution. But if it is actually stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it is all torn to pieces, let him bring it as evidence. He shall not make restitution for what has been torn to pieces. If a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it is injured or dies while its owner is not with it, he shall make full restitution. If its owner is with it, he shall not make restitution. If it is hired, it came for its hire. The property laws wrap up, again, talking about the trust that's required between people in a functioning, godly society. If you initiate borrowing something from somebody and you break it or lose it, you've got to make him whole. But if you initiate having someone watch something for you and it breaks while they're not looking, well, they're not entitled to repay you. All the while investigating and limiting the possibility that either side is lying to the other. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged and lies with her, he must pay a dowry for her to be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her away to him, he shall pay money equal to the dowry for virgins. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god other than to the Lord alone shall be utterly destroyed. These laws begin a list sometimes called sundry laws. There are many lists of sundry laws throughout the Bible, and all it means is that they're laws that are important, but are not necessarily sorted in any particular order. These first few miscellaneous laws include harsh punishments for those who exhibit cult-like behavior. And the reason they had harsh punishments was because Israel, God's people, the kingdom of priests, couldn't afford to pervert itself into worshiping other gods or worshiping the true God in the wrong way and leading the entire world astray. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or orphan. If you afflict him at all, and if he does cry out to me, I will surely hear his cry, and my anger will be kindled, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you are not to act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, you are to return it to him before the sun sets, for that is his only covering. It is his cloak for his body. What else shall he sleep in? And it shall come about, when he cries out to me, that I will hear him, for I am gracious. And once again, we hear some really profound laws that you wouldn't necessarily expect coming from such an ancient people group. Oppression of immigrants, widows, orphans, and the poor are strictly forbidden. Again, it's all about protecting the vulnerable and valuing them as fellow image bearers. Too many times we read these sections of laws in the Bible and are tempted to skip over them because we see all the cultural jargon and we don't quite understand it, and we think it doesn't apply to us. And then we skip over profound commands like these because they seem obvious. We don't properly acknowledge the importance of these verses and how we still have a responsibility to bear these out today. And as such, we are to take measures to make sure we're not abusing or oppressing immigrants, widows, orphans, the poor. We need to protect vulnerable people in our society and value them as fellow image bearers. You shall not curse God, nor curse a ruler of your people. You shall not delay the offering from your harvest and your vintage. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. It shall be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be holy men to me. Therefore you shall not eat any flesh torn to pieces in the field. You shall throw that to the dogs. And the chapter ends with a few more laws about how we should treat God, and specifically how we should treat offerings to Him with respect. We talked a little bit about the giving up of the firstborn in chapter 13. God claimed ownership of every firstborn son and every firstborn of the livestock, which meant that the families would have to pay an offering to God as a ransom of sorts to be able to raise them. This was to remind the people of the death of the firstborn sons in Egypt, and to rebuke any arrogance of the people in thinking that they were in control of their family lineage and destiny, to keep them from thinking they had complete control over their children. Like everything else, the whole earth and everyone in it, it all belongs to God. That includes the firstborn, the poor, the vulnerable, all property, all land, all people in a certain household, and all nations. God owns it all. And as such, we should do our best to treat it with dignity and respect. In everything we think we own, we're really just stewards who have been entrusted with a part of His assets. And when we have this proper reverence, it leads to equity for all people, including our neighbors and the poor and the vulnerable, the immigrants and the widows and the orphans. This is what God's laws are all about. And this is what we as communities of followers of God should also be all about. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope you have a good day, and God bless.